Welcome back, everybody, to the Star Wars podcast, where we talk all things Marvel, Star Wars, and everything in between. And we're really getting in between here today. Let's see. We're talking about The Flash. We're talking about The Flash and full spoiler detail. So if you haven't seen that movie, I would get out of here. And unfortunately, Tommy is no longer with us. So I'm going to have to go back in time to get him for the next podcast. He won't be here today, but we do have a lovely guest. It is former congressional staffer, nonprofit lobbyist, co-host of the Kickball Friends podcast, master of decks, and this is a new title, and I hope he accepts it. Let's call him a Star Wars DC correspondent. It's Jesse Schoolnik. Jesse, how are you?
I am wonderful, and thank you. You have now joined the ranks of my mother, of the people in the world who have called me lovely. So I'm feeling good to be here. And I want to say that I'm here to redeem Kickball Friends after my co-host's frankly embarrassing appearance in your last trivia show. Unlike Robbie, I got out of the first round, and I'm glad we're here to talk about some DC stuff. As you mentioned, that is if I had a specialty, I would call it, I have a Green Lantern tattoo, I think I've mentioned on this podcast. So it literally is blood deep, my love for DC Comics.
And I've got a Thanos tattoo, so I think I very much come from the school of Marvel. I'm wearing a Wolverine shirt right now, but I like DC too. I know, how could you not like Batman? We get a lot of Batman here, but I think the thing is, and this is probably going to be something that will be a theme throughout this podcast, where I'll come on here and I will defend very bad Marvel movies, right? Just because they're Marvel movies and I like Marvel and I enjoy them more than the average person. So I imagine you're probably coming from the same camp where are you more willing to forgive things because you're a bigger DC fan?
Well, as I mentioned, the Green Lantern tattoo, I cannot defend the Green Lantern movie. I will never forget sitting there pumped up. I actually had a Green Lantern ring. I went with a couple of friends who knew nothing about it but liked the trailer, brought them an orange ring and an indigo ring, ready to go. And it just fell really flat. So maybe I'll be a little more forgiving. I'm not a huge Snyderverse guy, but also I don't think it's the end of the world and that horrible like a lot of people out there. So maybe there is a little forgiveness, in my heart when it comes to these DC movies. But what can I say? I recently bought a house about a year ago, and my parents thought it was a great time to get all my comic books back to. Now that I have a giant basement. So I literally have about 10,000 comic books in my basement right now.
10,000.
Yeah, and it was probably around 13,000 at the height before I got rid of them. And I would say it's probably an even split between DC and Marvel. So while I love DC, I've read, when I talk about the X-Men, I'm going all the way back to, not the pre-Giant Size X-Men days, but from there on, the Byrne Fantastic Four, anything from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and forward. So
alrighty, well, hey, lovely to have you regardless. Jesse, I follow you on Letterboxd. I saw your star review.
I saw yours and you changed it.
I did change it after thinking about things, and I'll get into that. But I was actually hoping nobody would catch that because I felt a little embarrassed because I was thinking about it. I was like, oh. But Jesse, you famously said I'm too liberal with my Letterboxd reviews, so we'll dive into that in a minute. But I want to get your overall thoughts here. Walking out of the movie, how did you feel? Did it live up for you?
I absolutely loved it, and I will say this here, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of crap. I liked it better than Across the Spider-Verse. And I thought Across the Spider-Verse was a very, very good movie. I've been critical of the reception of that movie, even though I gave it 4 on Letterboxd. I thought it was wonderful. I know a lot of people are complaining about the overdoing of the multiversal storyline, but Marvel did 3-4 movies. You can't blame DC now that they're telling a story. And I'm not even a huge Flashpoint comic fan, which the movie is loosely based on. I think that's because it led to the abomination of New 52. But we're getting off track there. I remember about an hour and 10 minutes into the movie, sitting there and going to myself, I'm having a lot of fun here, and I've actually become a little less grumpy in old age. Grumpy in some ways as you get old, everybody gets grumpy, but I can see a movie and just enjoy it for what it is. And I feel so many people these days, whether they're on Facebook, on podcasts, on Letterboxd, they love to be critical and they all think they're clever coming up with the exact same jokes. I watched this movie, had a lot of fun, felt so much nostalgia that I'm sure we'll talk about later in this podcast. But it was just a great. I've had 3 movies I've watched in a row now that I've given 4 stars. I don't give that many movies 4 stars, so I'm really happy where I am in the world of movies right now. And if this is the end of this current iteration of DC Comics movies, I'm very happy where it ended. We still have the Aquaman movie, but who knows?
Yeah. No, definitely, and very well said. And that's the thing. I don't want to come on here and be a hater by any means. And there was a lot I liked about this movie. Like, I really like. I found myself laughing way more. Like, I mean, obviously, we kind of give Marvel a hard time for like a lot of their just like really watered down jokes in the modern movies. But this one, like, there was like 4 or 5 like really deep laughs for me. So I had a good time with the movie, and I think that's the thing. It's like. I think I walked in having heard James Gunn say this is the greatest comic book movie ever made, and I'm gonna have to push back. In fact, I think it might be my least favorite comic book movie this year.
What?
But that's the other 2 are really good in my opinion.
Well, again, I don't want to spoil the ending. I'm sure we will spoil it eventually, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse here. But I will say that the ending of this movie had the guts to do kind of what Guardians 3 didn't have, where Guardians, we've spoiled that on this podcast. I'm sure we can talk about it. That, oh, they're going to kill off Star-Lord. Cool. I'm like, oh no, turns out he's actually still alive. And by the way, they're all still alive, and there's no reason they cannot come back and make a 4th movie. The way this movie ended, it shows that sometimes you can't have that perfect ending, and that's the way it has to be. And I thought that was, I want to say it was a brave choice. I hate when people talk about it's a movie, but I think that was a choice that you don't see in a lot of movies these days, especially Marvel movies. Yeah, people may die, but it's usually after like their story concludes, over a decade, like Iron Man or whatnot. Yeah, we saw the hero not necessarily win at the end of this movie and have to accept that for basically that's life. And I thought that was a nice ending to have, a little different than the norm.
I mean, very well said. I can tell that you're coming with some great points here, because that was my biggest complaint about Guardians, and this movie does quite the opposite. So we will see if I go back up to a 4-star now that I'm at my 3.5 by the end of this. But I want to ask you this, because this is a big one that I've talked with our good friend Alex Brazard a lot about this, like leading up and like grappling with like, are we cool supporting Ezra Miller at this point? And like, I don't want to get too deep on this topic at this point, but I'm curious. Is that where do you stand on that? Are you able to like separate him? Is it or them? Sorry. In this context, how do you grapple with that?
First of all, I'm terrified. I'm going to mislabel the pronouns. I apologize if I do. It's not on purpose. So I look at it 2 ways. There's the macro view and the micro view. Like obviously at the micro level, like, yes, the things they did, not cool. Like a lot of issues there going into it. And I haven't delved as deep. I did, I think, back when it all broke, but it's been a while. I've kind of forgotten some of it. It seems to be that there might be some mental health issues, but at the macro sense, it doesn't bother me. And then I have tickets to go see the new Mission Impossible movie with Scientology and Tom Cruise. There's a lot of issues there. I mean, if am I not going to go see another Jonathan Majors Marvel movie? I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm Jewish. I've seen movies with Mel Gibson in them since he lost his mind 15 years ago. So I want to say that I'm better than that, but I'm not. And I can say I'm enjoying this as a Flash movie. I'm not necessarily supporting. I support Ezra getting better if that's possible, but I'm not supporting their actions going forward. But it's just really 2 different things, because there are too many jerks in this world. There are too many bad people. It sounds sad, but there are. And we like to be righteous and pick and choose. Like, I'm not going to watch The Flash, but I'm going to go ahead and watch this movie with someone who may have killed somebody. I'm just being just pulling that out of thin air there. So to answer your question, I'm fine watching it. Like, I just put it in the back of my head and I enjoyed it as a Flash movie.
Well said. Well said. Well, let's dive into the movie a little bit here. And there was we open on like one of the most insane, and again, like I have to respect the balls that this movie has at certain points. We open on one of the most insane superhero sequences I've probably ever seen, with the hospital and the babies falling out of the building. This was, I mean, both funny and uncanny and weird with these CGI babies. And I will say it was my first big laugh as well, when it looks like he's going to save the baby, but really he goes to the vending machine instead. Like that killed me. What did you think about this absolutely insane kind of opening? I mean, all of it together is opening for the Flash.
Well, I'm actually in the opposite camp, kind of, when it comes to the food stuff. Again, I'm just being a DC nerd. And Barry Allen's been around since like the early 60s. He basically, his introduction, I think he was in Showcase 4, is the beginning of the Silver Age of comics. So I'm sure between 1961 or whatever it was and today this has happened. But generally speaking, the Flash isn't a character who in the middle of a fight is scared of not having enough calories in him. And I'm probably taking that too seriously. And I thought it was kind of corny. I did like the whole baby sequence. There'll be a lot of talk about the CGI in this movie. I tend to think a lot of it is a stylistic choice versus bad CGI, but we can get into that later on. I did like, I'm not the first person to bring this up. I'm sure it's been all over the internet, but it has to be thought related to the Quicksilver time in the bottle scene in that whichever X-Men movie it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. Days of Future Past, and because you're always trying to up the ante, and how can we take this and have it more extreme? Not to be too 90s here, and I did like how he kind of had all the babies in a row there at the end and scooped them all up. And I actually thought the funniest part of that entire scene was his interaction with, I don't know if it was a nurse or whoever was in that building. Say she's just screaming as a normal human being would in that situation. He's like, you should see someone about this. The Justice League is not good at it quite yet. And I got a real good laugh over that.
Yeah, which, I feel like that's also might be some meta commentary on, like, some of the behind the scenes stuff as well, but
Yeah.
who knows? I guess maybe not in hindsight, but yeah, no, again, like, style it, like, I'm confused, and I get it, like, because I believe the director had come out and said, hey, yeah, it looks a little weird, especially in I wrote down what people have been calling it online. Where is it? The Speed Force Arena. So especially there, like, everyone looks like PlayStation 2 characters, and like I'm really like, I don't know, I'm torn on it.
The reason why I think it's stylistic is because these are people like Ron Livingston is in this movie. So it's not like you couldn't have filmed him in these scenes and put him in there. They've taken people who are alive and doing things in this movie and making them look a little odd. I did read that I think the director or the cinematographer, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, said that it's because as Barry is moving so fast through the Speed Force, things are kind of warped from his perception, and they want that to kind of be how we viewed it. Because let's not be honest, it is 2023, and I'm not going to think if they wanted to be super, super sharp CGI images, I think they could have gotten it done. And the fact that they didn't is why I think it was done on purpose. But maybe that's just me, as we mentioned earlier on, making excuses for the movie.
No, it's a fair point. So I want to dive into kind of, Barry's story here altogether, with his family and his mother getting murdered and the father going to prison, which is kind of like the heart of everything from the Flash here. Let me ask you this real quick, and this is maybe like off topic a little bit. How did Barry's mom die? Who killed Barry's mom? Do we know this? Is this a comic thing?
I mean, I think it's changed over the years. I think it's like the reverse Flash goes back in time and kills her or something, or Zoom. There's so many, like, anybody who has watched the Flash TV show, which I gave up on a couple seasons ago, like there's 5 million villains and they're all being used and they're all anti-Flashes. Although I think some of the best Flash villains have nothing to do with the Speed Force. I don't think, for the purposes of this movie, I don't think it really matters. Quite honestly, I think the biggest problem this movie has, and the Flash movies and Justice League movies have, is that they're using Barry Allen. Barry Allen is a wet blanket. He's the second Flash, but the first Flash of the Silver Age. Wally West, I don't know if you know anything about Flash comics. Wally West is the best Flash. He was the Flash from the mid 80s up until the mid aughts. About a year ago, he took over the mantle again. He's red-haired from the Midwest, but a lot more fun to play with, where Barry would have been that guy in college who, like, you're trying to find someone to buy you a beer, and he'd be like, well, guys, we are underage. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. It's just not that fun of a character. It's not really what you asked, but I had to get that out there somehow. I think, like in all these movies, it's the MacGuffin that, why does he have to go back in time to save his mother who killed her? Doesn't matter. I'm surprised, he didn't accidentally kill his mom by going back in time. They love doing that in movies.
Yeah. Okay, no, well said. And I think that's what's interesting is, I found myself in this movie, and I don't know how we're gonna go about clarifying which Barry is. Maybe we could say Flash and Barry, and then maybe
there you go.
But yeah, I found Barry to be way more enjoyable as a character. So. And for what it's worth, I would agree that I guess the standard Barry Allen that we have is not necessarily fun.
Well, as someone who has ADHD, I mean, Barry had ADHD like to the max, and I thought it was funny in some points. At some point, like, it's the world is ending, and you stop making jokes, which it's funny because the Marvel movies are based on that. I think maybe just in this case, it didn't work for me, but. You had to differentiate the two characters somehow, and you had the more, weathered version of him from our present, and then the kind of loser, goofier version from the past.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, let's see here. So we got a lot of characters in this movie that, and I think a big issue that I might have, and Tommy is like screaming at his phone listening to this right now because he tells me every like week, the trailers, I kind of hurt my experience in a way where, like, the film is kind of set up in a way that you have to go get Michael Keaton, then you have to go get Supergirl, and then you fight Zod, like, and you just, like, I knew every beat as far as that went, and so again, maybe that's just a point to not watching trailers. But
you had to. I understand the reveal of Michael Keaton, if we didn't know, would have blown my mind. But exactly. I think half the people going to see this movie may not have gone to see it if they didn't know Michael Keaton was in it. I think you had to have that out there just because of the reputation of some of these DC comic movies, or DCEU is what they call it. You need, even my wife, who doesn't really care about these, was watching the trailer. Michael Keaton. And that kind of, she didn't care enough to go see the movie with me, but it at least got her interested a little bit in it. I think the general population saw that and was really excited. And I'm going to tread some dangerous ground here. I think Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill are the best Batman and best Superman. Now, Keaton is my Batman. I love him, but I think part of it is because where we've come with CGI and technology, they're able to do a lot more stuff. But I liked having the more. Yes, I know the Batman killed. I think that's the biggest problem some people may have. But if you see the way he fights, it's a lot less stiff than Christian Bale or Keaton, some of these other people. And he was really able to go out there and act like I think Batman would. And I think. As I love Christopher Reeve as much as everybody else, and again, he's in my mind when I think of Superman, that's who I think of. But Henry Cavill is just a massive dude, and I think he is Superman. I know it's gonna, because people don't love the Snyder movies. This might be a very controversial take, and I wouldn't be upset with anybody who thought differently. But I'm sad we're not going to get more of those two actors in these roles, and I'm glad we did get a little bit of Batfleck in this one.
Yeah. I will not fight you on the Henry Cavill of it all. I think Ben Affleck, I might give you some pushback there.
Who's your favorite? Who's your favorite Batman? Who's your favorite? Who's the best? Because again, my favorite is Michael Keaton because I grew up on that.
Yeah, so it's so loaded. I want to say Christian Bale because those movies have been so influential to me. But okay, here's my hot take.
Yeah,
George Clooney's a pretty great Batman.
The problem is that to this day, I've never finished watching Batman and Robin. I remember I turned when I was still in high school at that point. I turned it off. I'm like, I can't watch the rest of this. It's so bad. So I think he got saddled with a really bad movie. And I actually wasn't a huge fan. I didn't watch ER. I was a Chicago Hope guy, as Kickball Friends listeners might know. So I felt the need to like pick a side. So I was never really a Clooney guy. I've come around on Clooney. I think he's a pretty cool guy now. So yeah, I think he got screwed by the script there.
And I'm not the type that like I actively avoid bad. Like if I think a movie's bad or I won't enjoy it, I will not see it. Like there's people that, like I have a friend Nathan who's been on this podcast who like just seeks out horrible movies, and like I will never understand that. So it's one of the few movies that's so bad that it is good for me personally. So that's kind of where I fall on that. I do want to go back to, though, kind of mentioning the trailers. Let me throw this at you, and I get exactly what you're saying. Michael Keaton basically had to be in these trailers. What if they hid Supergirl? I think that would have been a really awesome reveal.
I think they could have. And I wonder, because she wasn't really shown in the trailers till the end of the trailers. And I wonder if things just weren't tracking high enough. And they're like, oh no, we got to figure out another way to get people's butts in these seats. I don't know, but I think that would have been fun because, and if also the Henry Cavill stuff hadn't come out, that he's not coming back. So people could have been waiting the entire time to see Henry Cavill. And then it would have been a huge switch that may have pissed off some people, but it would have been a big surprise. So yeah, I do agree that I think they could have gone without showing that. And there were, some surprises that they did hide, which I can't believe. I told Robbie, stay off Twitter because you're not seeing this movie till Tuesday. People are going out of the way to spoil things. But I'm glad I got to see this with a fresh pair of eyes. And yeah, I think they could have done a better job with the Supergirl stuff, though. That being said, I thought Supergirl was what I thought. Sasha Calle, I think is how you pronounce her name, was fantastic. I wish I could have gotten a little more of her in the movie.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that James Gunn is also planning one of those movies coming up as well. So I see no harm in keeping this actress here. I would love to see a little bit more. So. Yeah, I want to so back to Michael Keaton here. I really did. I thought it was a lot of fun because this is not in the trailers at all. But when they first go to the mansion, he has like turned into like a feral person living in here, getting drunk and growing his hair out. And it leads to a really cool fight scene. We also get the explanation of kind of, in my opinion, I guess there's no good way to explain it, but they're just like, yeah, it's a mess, but I'm here. This is why it makes sense. So,
but they went a different. I respect they went a different way from Marvel. Marvel was basically, oh, there's a timeline, and then things branch off, and this is basically like, it doesn't branch off. It affects the past and the present, and it's basically a bowl of spaghetti that sometimes it touches, but it's just a giant mess. So it kind of yada 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 it a bit, but they went in a new direction, which I'm happy. It wasn't just a retread of what we've seen already.
Yeah. So what did you think of all this sequence of getting our old Bruce Wayne here, and as well as like going back into the Batcave? I thought there's a lot of fun stuff there.
The nostalgia that vibed to me. I don't know how old you are. I was born in 1981. So in 1989, I was. I saw it in the theater. I remember I was like, why wasn't Prince in the movie? I thought he would be in the movie because of the sound, the music video. I had a Joker's lunchbox. My summer camp group was called Jim's Jokers. I was totally into it. So I got to tell you, the Batman '89 theme still slaps. When I heard it, I got chills. I was ready. I was looking around. I was ready to cheer both times when Michael Keaton goes, yeah, I'm Batman. Or when he goes, you want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. I was like, he said it. He said the line. And the one scene I really wanted once he showed up, they gave me, was the bat plane against the moon. I remember they did that in the original one too. I mean, I am a huge Michael Keaton fan. He's one of my all-time favorite actors. I will see anything. I mean, I'm a huge Birdman fan, all the way back to his Night Shift, I think is one of his earlier comedic roles. I think he's great. So the fact that he was there, he could do no wrong. So again, I would say maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but I don't think anybody is going to see this movie and go, Michael Keaton was not great in it.
Yeah.
Am I crazy? I think that's going to be the general consensus.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he did an incredible job. It was so fun to see him back. I kind of have a little section here where I want to talk about the villains, if you consider them both villains. But I want to talk about Zod, and then we kind of get the Dark Flash at the end here. Now, this is probably my biggest complaint about the movie. I thought a lot of the motivations of Ezra feeling like he needs to stop Zod and this, like, I wasn't fully buying into it, and also the fact that like Zod's not really in the movie until like the final act. It's almost I don't know. It almost feels like there was something missing. I needed a little bit more from him, and I love Michael Shannon as well, so that would have been great. Where do you stand on that? I guess you could argue that it's not like an essential part of the movie, but it is like the climactic battle.
Well, I did think it was kind of goofy how oh, I got my powers, and that was the day before Zod came. Like what a coincidence that happened. I actually really what they should have done is to people. Have you seen the Snyder Cut?
Yes.
So they should have brought that opportunity to have Martian Manhunter show up again, because he was there during all this was going down, just hiding, as we learned in the Snyder Cut. I thought that would have been a lot of fun. Michael Shannon, always great, was kind of like the specter looming in the background, because like, oh, Zod's here, gonna have to deal with him eventually, and it was kind of yada 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 until it became time for that part of the movie to happen. Again, it's probably not the best villain, but it was. I had a lot of fun with the way they were fighting him and his team. But I see where you're coming from, where it was kind of an afterthought to part of the movie. But I don't know. As I think about it now, I don't know what the main thought of this movie was. Just to like have a multiversal romp, maybe, and spend time with old friends.
Yeah, I mean, more of like just a coming of age. Like, oops, I'm in this situation and with all these superheroes, and let's get me back. Yeah, I mean, I agree that we had to have some sort of looming threat there, but. Yeah, just a little weird. And also, let's talk about Dark Flash. How did you feel about, we kind of get a glimpse of him knocking Barry out of time and space or whatever. But how do you feel about this whole character and how they handled it?
Well, at first I was, which anti-Flash is this now? Which character is it? And I was a little worried it wasn't going to be who it ended up being, and people were going to complain that it was just tacked on at the end. And who is this person? I don't understand. I think the fact, we're spoiling things here. So it turned out to be Barry, who had been doing this for 50 years, trying to keep going back and saving his mom and saving everyone. It shows again that time is not linear, that things are happening all at the same time, but at different times. And it really hits home. We hear both Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne say this, and we hear Michael Keaton's character say that, what happened, and it's horrible, but it made them who they are today. And they can't imagine what it would have been like if that hadn't happened. And I think it shows, it leads to the end that these things have to happen, whether it's going back to Spider-Verse, whether it's one of those events that have to happen to make a hero. I like that it wrapped itself up nicer than I thought it was going to, actually, I think, going into that scene. And it didn't last too long. I didn't look to see who was the actor playing older Barry. Do we know?
That's a good question. I have no idea. I thought it might just be because we don't get like a great glimpse of the face.
No.
Like, he looks like symbiote type. I kind of figured it was probably Ezra Miller and they did some aging, but
it might be.
Yeah. I have no idea. So,
but you know what? I think it was a good way to but deal with having two Barrys hanging around, and it showed that the younger Barry doesn't know what it's like to be a hero, and finally, learned the lesson that older Barry, I think, was trying to teach him towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. Okay. So I also have another section here where I just want to stop down and focus on some of the cameos we got.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a lot of takes on this. I'm going to talk about the one that blew my mind the most up front here.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
It's Nick fucking Cage, baby. I mean, this was so. And this is another one. I just laughed. Like I was like, you know,
You knew it. Did you know what it was referencing going into it?
yes, there was
Okay.
a project that was in the works with Nick Cage. He had the long. I've seen the photos of the long hair, so
So bad.
just absolutely ridiculous. And here's my other thing. Again, they're kind of in like the time. Like they went with like the CGI, you know, again, kind of like you mentioned, like it's supposed to look distorted or whatever, but it was like they had Nicolas Cage as a cameo, but I'm fairly certain it was all computer generated too. So it was like really weird to me. But again, they went there, and I appreciate that.
It kind of reminded me of the end of Fast 7 with Paul Walker of it all, where him knowing that he had passed away, it looking a little off seemed almost not angelic, but like something like it seemed fitting for the moment. And for these, for whatever it worked for me. I didn't have a problem with it being kind of off. I did love that they threw in the giant spider, which they were for whatever reason they wanted Superman to fight a giant spider in that '90s. Tim Burton, I think it was Kevin Smith, I think wrote it. But great nod and good for. As we all, well, I was as we all know, as I know, I don't know if you know, Nicolas Cage's son is named Kal-El. Like that's how big of a
Oh,
Superman
okay.
fan he is. Yeah. So I think he probably this is a dream come true for him. I would imagine.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, great to see him. I will say so. The one that didn't play as well for me, and especially when paired back to back with Nicolas Cage, was the Christopher Reeves one. I found this one to be a little. Again, I found Nicolas Cage to be really weird, but this was like weird in a kind of a worse way. Where I was like, is this like I don't know, like it almost seems like, you know, Nicolas Cage is here as a joke, and then they're paying homage to Christopher Reeves, who like didn't consent to like having. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's the whole like more moral thing you could dive into there, but it was
Well,
a little weird to me.
did you have a problem with Peter Cushing in Rogue One as Grand Moff Tarkin?
Okay, so and I thought about this, and fake Peter Cushing played a part in the movie where Christopher Reeves just kind of stood there. So I don't know. Yeah.
I've read people go, oh, it's disgusting. I don't like it. It's not like they took Chris Reeve and made him do something crazy. Like he was Superman, So I assume they probably have to get a sign off from his family. Maybe not. Maybe they own the image. I don't know. But I think the fact that he's basically doing what he is best known for, I again, he's dead, so we'll never know. But I didn't have a problem. I actually liked having Helen Slater there as Supergirl, just as a throwing her in. Why not? My actual favorite of all of the cameos in that scene came after we saw Adam West and George Reeves, but it was Teddy Sears playing Jay Garrick, the Golden Age Flash. I'm a huge Golden Age Flash fan too. He's the guy who looks like he's wearing a plate on his head or a bowl on his head, kind of as a hat. He was only in there for a couple seconds, but I was super happy to see them throw some of these older characters a bone.
Yeah, this is the great thing about having you on, because I would say most of, I saw things, I was like, I don't know who that is. So is there any other flashes that we get of other cameos that
I didn't see, but when it comes to those scenes, I almost missed Jay Garrick because I'm looking in the wrong place. I'm like, where should I be looking to see somebody?
Yeah.
So I have to see that scene again and see. Judging by the lists I've seen online, it doesn't seem like there's anybody else. Although I didn't realize when I watched that Nikolai Coster-Waldau, I think was his name, from Jimmy Lannister, was the guy that the Flash stole a pizza from when he was running, when he first got his powers. So I thought that was kind of a fun cameo as well.
Yeah. So not in the same sequence, and definitely jumping to the end here, but I have to talk about my favorite Batman who shows up at the end, George Clooney. I thought this was like such a fun reveal, fun way to end the movie. Did this work for you?
I did not see it coming whatsoever. It was not on my radar. I thought maybe it would be Michael Keaton, like, oh, Michael Keaton's now the Batman, because I had heard that rumor that was going to be. And for a second, I'm like, George Clooney, what's he doing here? And then I'm like, oh, wait, he was Batman too. And, who knows if Val Kilmer had been in better health, maybe they would have worked him into this as well. And because this is, again, with Aquaman, generally the end of the Snyderverse, is this like a ha, never to be addressed again? Or are we going to see him playing Bruce Wayne in some fashion in Tim Gunn's universe? I don't know.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I feel like in the conversation about this movie that James Gunn and other people have had is like, this is the movie that's going to reset things and open the doors to the new DC universe. And like, is this the new like, is that our first look at what the future looks like? Because it also, I believe you probably could speak on it better, but I know that the upcoming Batman movie is based on The Brave and the Bold, which I think has an older Batman and a younger Batman, the son. So
No,
you know,
it's a really weird. So it's starring his son Damian Wayne, which originally in a non-canonical comic book, he slept with Talia al Ghul, and at the end you see that she has a kid, and that's like, oh, Batman again. But it was like an Elseworld tale or something, didn't really matter. And then Grant Morrison took over the X-Men like 10 years ago or so, and brought Damian Wayne in as the fruits of that union. Kind of, I think, been sped up. So not necessarily an older Batman, but there's no reason with the technology we have both in the comic book world and just in our movie making world that an older, like 60-year-old guy couldn't be Batman and still kick him. I mean, we believe all of the nonsense we're seeing on the screen in these superhero movies. We can suspend. We were fine with Michael Keaton doing it, right? Even though he died in the movie, but why not? I mean, let's give him his second chance at Batman, and maybe he will be one of my favorite Batman by the time. Or Batsman or Batman. I don't know which way to say it, but maybe he would be my favorite when all is said and done. Because it's not going to be Robert Pattinson. He's off in his own little Bat universe as well.
Yeah. So, great stuff here. Jesse, what else? What have I been skipping over things? I know you've got notes there. Is there anything else you want to bring to the table?
Well, I would say that when it comes to this movie, and really any of these multiverse movies, but specifically this one because it has time travel, I never would have thought the main thesis would have come from Grandpa Simpson. What he said to Homer Simpson on his wedding day, he said, "If you ever travel back in time, don't step on anything because even the slightest change can alter the future in ways you can't possibly imagine." And that's exactly what happened in this movie. The crux of having to let his mother die for the greater good, that's, I think, it's going to get, I think, overlooked by people complaining about Ezra Miller or complaining about this. But I think if you look at a lot of the struggles superheroes have gone through in movies, could you do that? Could I do? I mean, it kind of, if you look back to an earlier movie this year, Knock at the Cabin, same kind of thing. What's more important, your family or the rest of the world? Would you rather screw the rest of the world if you can't have your family? And it shows that Barry in this universe is a true hero, that he was able to knowingly let his mother die for the greater good. I think that's should be praised when it comes to how these movies end, because I think a lot of these Marvel movies have a little more of a happy-go-lucky ending. There's always your Civil War, your any of the Captain America movies, really. But I think the Flash is really bridging that gap between what's perceived for the DC movies of being not fun, dark, cold, and the Marvel movies for happy. I think it's really kind of a happy medium we got here, where there was a lot of really tragic stuff going on, but a lot of funny scenes too that I think we'll remember. And this will be a movie I want to rewatch again, 100%.
Yeah, and I will say, like, there was a couple points in the beginning of the movie where they're kind of building up the relationships between his father and kind of getting us in on, like, the emotional core of this movie. And I was like, I'm not buying this. Like, I'm here for the action, right? Like, I wasn't invested until the end. And I do agree this was an incredible way, and the message in that having to leave his mother behind, and then him going in the grocery store and pretending to be someone else. Like, I did think that was a very touching moment for the movie. So
are we to believe that his mother knew it was him, or thought it was him, or just had a feeling there was someone she recognizes, that that unspoken feeling that someone she can trust?
Yeah, I guess it's not something I really considered, but yeah, I'm sure there was something in that moment that probably was like, this is important.
Ooh, I don't mean to cut you off. I just thought and I want to end before talking about this. A real weakness in the movie, I thought the character of Iris West was not good. I was not impressed with the actress. No offense to her. She came off pretty horrible initially, and what did we see out of Barry that she's like, oh, you should call me. We should go on a date. Like, it just kind of was. It was heavy-handed because he's married to Iris West in the comic book, so we got to get them together. It just that storyline did not equal its payoff in my view.
Yeah, that's another one that's kind of like in the Zod category of like, I'm in between, like, just cut it out altogether or just give me a little bit more, please. And maybe we could, maybe that's what we needed. Maybe cut her out and then give us more Zod or vice versa. Like, I feel like time could have been best spent elsewhere.
Well, her scene in the Snyder Cut, I thought was actually pretty cool with a car accident and dogs and hot dogs and all this stuff, and Barry saving her. And that was a lot of fun, but her character just, and even his Barry's coworkers too, just didn't seem fleshed out enough. Just kind of seemed like not great people that I like. They were kind of like busting his balls, but in a way that seemed mean, not like what a friend would do. I kind of just didn't understand the purpose of that entire scene, other than to show that he is working at the crime lab.
Yeah. So I'll leave it with this, Jesse, and maybe this, or in the audience as well, makes you guys feel a little bit better on where I stand with this movie. This is my favorite of the DC Zack Snyder universe movies. I think I like it more than all of them. So with that being said, I like the Batman, the Suicide Squad more, but from this this universe of Justice League, I think this is definitely my favorite movie, and I had a really good time with it. I think people need. I think James Gunn's he must have a vested interest. I don't know what he didn't have any hand in this movie, but I guess he is invested in this movie doing well. But like he needs to stop saying that this is the greatest comic book movie ever. I think all of the movies he directed are better than this one. So yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, but I think the key is like just have fun with this. Just go in, prepare to laugh because it's ridiculous in so many spots, and at the end it'll shock you with you might find yourself more invested than you thought you would be. So
go in there with an open mind. Don't have some preconceived take about, I'm going to be snarky about this movie because it's a DC movie, and just sit back, relax, and enjoy it. And if you are, over 30 something, enjoy the nostalgia of seeing Michael Keaton as Batman. You can't go wrong. And I keep ruining the ending of this podcast.
No, please.
What did you think about the after credits scene?
Oh yes, I completely forgot about that. I didn't mention it because it was, for me, it was Much Ado About Nothing. Maybe there's something there for you. I like Jason Momoa, so it's always fun to see him.
So I thought it was kind of a throwaway scene. However, I know he changed everything, but are we still to believe then again that Barry thinks he's in the wrong universe still? Because he was talking about, my Arthur Curry, like he loved bacon, he was cuddly or something. And I was like, oh, well, there wasn't an Arthur Curry in the the previous universe. He hadn't been born. So is he still just like out here living in a universe that he thinks is not the correct universe? Did you catch that? Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It's not something I thought about, but I'm also in the mind, like, and this sounds so negative to come at it like this, but like, does it even matter?
Yes, that was kind of my thought. I want it to matter. I want to believe, as Fox Mulder once said. Right? It's make it happen.
No, yeah. Again, let me ask you this. So there was a moment in there. Jason Momoa took off a ring. Was it a ring? And he gave it to Barry. What was that?
I just think it was a ring. I don't think it was anything.
I was gonna say, like, you mentioned the Flash ring, and then Barry had a ring in this. Like, I don't know if that's a Flash thing, but a suit's in the ring, and then there's a lot of rings going on. Like, is this like the Infinity Gauntlet for DC? Do you need all 5 rings?
If you want to talk about rings, what my favorite, or the project I'm looking forward to the most in the James Gunn universe, is the Booster Gold TV show. I don't know if you know anything about Booster Gold, but he was he was a football player in like the 25th century, I think, and he cheated, or he threw a game, or so he became persona non grata and became a janitor at a superhero museum and stole Legion of Superheroes flight ring and a couple other things, and went back in time to become a superhero in our time. And he's part of my favorite Justice League comic book of all time, the Justice League International, which is kind of a sillier take on everything. So I'm really hoping they they land the plane on that one, specifically because Booster Gold's best friend is a character named the Blue Beetle, but not the Blue Beetle we're getting a movie on, a different Blue Beetle. So I'm interested to see if like that character is going to be in the Blue Beetle movie in some capacity, then move over to Booster Gold. But again, a Legion flight ring. I don't think we're ever going to get a Legion of Superheroes movie, but a Legion flight ring will be showing up in the Booster Gold show. So that's one more ring to add to the pile.
And I'm not letting the podcast in it either, apparently. But I got to ask you this, because you're a DC
Yeah.
guy. Here we are at the end. In Marvel, a lot of like the underlings of superheroes, they tend to there tends to be something different. Iron Man will have War Machine, or Wolverine has X-23, right? Like they're very clearly defined in the title of the character, typically, that they are different characters. But what I've noticed in DC is there are multiple Flashes, there are multiple Blue Beetles, there are multiple Batmen. I don't even really know what I'm asking, but is there something there? What's going on here? Can they not come up with their own names? Why are there two?
So here's at least what we're seeing in Marvel in the last 10 to 15 years. There's a real push for diversity, which, again, when these comic books were created, some in the 30s, some in the 60s, they're written by, old white guys. So most of the superheroes are white characters. So you see a lot of the new Marvel characters, either, whether it be women or the black or whatever, because they want people to be able to read a comic book and say, you know what, I see myself in that comic book. I tend to not like a lot of those characters, not for any of those reasons, but just
Jesse.
I know it's comic book readers are like whoever was the character whoever was like, Green Lantern when I first started reading comic books, that's my Green Lantern. I don't like anybody different. They're very, very ordinary. When it comes to DC Comics, it's much more of like a generational thing. Like the people who take over a mantle, like Barry Allen or Wally West was the nephew of Barry Allen, and he was Kid Flash first. And then when Barry Allen died during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Barry Allen was the next logical person to step in. And then when Wally West eventually retired for a little bit, a character named Impulse, who was Barry Allen's like descendant from the future, come back to the present, he then moved up to the Flash. So it's like the reason they're there is because they're next in line, and it all makes sense. The problem is no one can let any character die, so they keep bringing the original ones back, so then you have a whole bunch of them. But I love it. I love having a Flash family. I love having a Green Lantern Corps, because that way, I like Wally West. There's a Wally West comic out there. You like Barry Allen? Barry Allen is appearing in some Justice League comics right now, so they're out there. So you don't necessarily see as many new, younger characters, although we are getting some. Like I said, the Blue Beetle. Jaime Reyes is going to be in a movie this fall. He popped up, I think, in the mid-aughts, too. So he's been around for almost 20 years. But going back to the Marvel characters, I would like to reiterate, I do not dislike them because of any issue other than they are new and not the characters that I grew up and loved with, and comic book writers and readers hate change. I love everybody.
Okay. We believe you, Jesse. We believe you. Jesse, this is so much fun. I got to close with recommendations though.
Yeah.
You gotta leave, because I feel like we align in taste often. So I gotta know, is there a movie or TV or show or something you've been interested in recently that you want to leave people with?
Well, I can't speak the entire movie. But earlier today I watched the first 45 minutes of Extraction 2, starring Chris Hemsworth. This might be biased because I just watched it. It may have one of the best fight scenes / chase scenes I've ever seen in a movie. And the first one had a kind of cool one too. I was exhilarated, and after that scene ended, I had to go do something. I had to turn it off. Fantastic. I also recently saw Beau is Afraid, which I don't know where you stand on Ari Aster. When I saw Hereditary, I think I said on Facebook, seeing Hereditary is like going to the Holocaust Museum. I'm really happy I did it, and I feel really sad and want to lay in bed in a ball for the rest of the day. Similar feelings after seeing Midsommar. This movie isn't quite like that. It's 3 hours long, and it made me feel, I'm not sure what it made me feel, but it made me feel something. And I need to read like some dissertations on what this actually means, because it was very odd, but it somehow worked for me. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, or anybody else's thoughts when they have a chance to see that movie. It is a hassle to sit through a 3 hour movie. I won't blame you if you don't watch it.
I've got some good news for you. You know,
Yes.
I don't know if I'm allowed to spoil this just yet, but I was invited on Kickball Friends to talk about our favorite movies of the
Yeah.
first half of the year. So today, what I did is I wanted to catch up. I want to make sure I saw the movies I wanted to see. Beau is Afraid is one that I have missed. But I love Ari Aster. I love all of the movies up until this point. But so I will be getting off this podcast and watching that very movie to prepare to present some of my favorite movies of the year.
I'm super excited for that. And you might hit the credits and go, WTF, what are you talking about, Jesse? And that would be a very valid way to view this movie. But it's just so bonkers. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Jesse, again, thank you so much for doing this. I gotta get you on here more. I don't know what DC stuff is coming up next, but we'll definitely be chatting soon.
Thank you. And remember, Kickball Friends podcast, usually every Tuesday, late afternoon. We give each other a hard time, but Robbie, my co-host, is fantastic. Love having him there. And we're I think around 271 episodes right now. So we've been going strong since the beginning of COVID, and a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, okay. So, I gave Robbie a hard time because he ratted me out in front of all the other podcasters because I said Kickball Friends is my favorite podcast, but
Okay,
I'll say it here
again.
I'll say it here again. It is my favorite podcast. You guys, such great banter. You're always talking about the things I need to hear about, and you're not pretentious. So please, everybody, I'll have the link in the show notes if you want to check out the Kickball Friends podcast.
And the amount of people who come up to me and come up to Robbie and go, you guys really like each other? And we're like, yeah, just, we've known each other for about 13 years now. And this is the kind of relationship we have. And, it works for the podcast.
Yeah. All right, Jesse, I'm going to close this out here. I like to remind you guys to rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify, preferably 5 stars. Also, please subscribe because we're going to be here every single week. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Secret Invasion, Ahsoka's down the pipeline. We're going to be covering those things week to week. So if you want those episodes, you can subscribe and they'll come right to your feed. Also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Star Wars Pod. And we also have a Discord community going on. So if that's something you're interested in, you can hit us up and we will get you in there. But that is all we got for you guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye.